The Chin family dinner table was always a battleground disguised as a meal. Not violent. Not loud. Just competitive in that particular way high-achieving families weaponize success. Every conversation was a scorecard. Every achievement was measured against siblings. Every career milestone was evaluated for its contribution to the family legacy. My brother David, 4 years older than me, always won. Stanford MBA at 26. Vice president at Goldman Sachs at 28. Started his own fintech company at 30. Raised a Series A round of $15 million at 32. By 35, his company was valued at $340 million and being courted by major acquisition targets. Dad loved to talk about David. My son, the entrepreneur, he'd say to everyone at his Rotary Club meetings, at temple events, at neighborhood gatherings. The pride in his voice was unmistakable. Then there was me. Rachel Chin, the younger daughter who chose academia over business. I'd studied mathematics at MIT, got my PhD in quantitative finance at 25, took a research position at a financial think tank in Boston. I published papers on algorithmic trading strategies, risk modeling, and market microstructure. My work was cited in academic journals and occasionally by financial professionals, but it wasn't the kind of success that impressed at family dinners. Rachel's very smart, Mom would say carefully. Very academic. She does research. The implication: smart but not successful. Academic but not practical. Respectable but not impressive. David made it explicit at every opportunity. At my 28th birthday dinner, when I mentioned a paper I'd published in the Journal of Financial Economics. That's great, Rach. I'm sure all 12 people who read academic journals are very impressed. When I got promoted to senior researcher at 30, senior researcher. That's like, what, $120,000 a year? I spend that on my car lease. When I explain my work on market inefficiency detection algorithms, theoretical stuff. Let me know when you do something that makes actual money. Dad would chuckle and change the subject. Mom would give me sympathetic looks that somehow made it worse. Nobody ever defended me. Nobody ever suggested that David's constant belittling was inappropriate. The message was clear. David was the successful one. I was the smart one who'd chosen a less valuable path. What they didn't know, my academic research, was a cover. Yes, I did publish papers. Yes, I worked at the think tank. But my real work happened in the 12 hours a day they never asked about. I'd been building proprietary trading algorithms since my PhD dissertation. Sophisticated programs that identified market inefficiencies and executed trades in microseconds. At 26, I'd licensed my first algorithm to a hedge fund for $2 million plus 3% of profits generated. It made them $47 million in 18 months. At 28, I launched my own quantitative trading fund, RCM Capital, named with my initials. Started with $5 million of my own money from algorithm licensing fees. Grew it to $40 million in 2 years through consistent 40% plus annual returns. By 32, I was managing $480 million across 17 institutional clients. My algorithms were some of the most sophisticated in the industry. My fund had never had a losing year. My personal net worth was $156 million. I lived in a modest condo in Cambridge, drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, wore clothes from Target and Uniqlo. I published academic papers and worked at my think tank job, which paid $180,000 annually and required maybe 15 hours a week of actual work. My family assumed that salary was my only income. They assumed I was scraping by in expensive Boston, probably accumulating debt, definitely not building wealth. Let us know if you need help, Mom had said once after David bought his third investment property. Your father and I know Boston is expensive. We can send you something to help with rent. I'm fine, Mom. Are you sure? We don't want you struggling while David does so well. I'm not struggling. She'd patted my hand sympathetically, clearly not believing me. The dynamic crystallized at David's Series B celebration dinner 2 years ago. He'd just raised $85 million in new funding, valuing his company at $340 million. The entire family gathered at an expensive restaurant in San Francisco. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. David stood to make a toast. This is what happens when you understand business. When you take risks. When you build something real instead of hiding in academia theorizing about markets you're too afraid to actually trade in. He'd looked directly at me on that last part. Everyone had laughed, clinked glasses, congratulated David on his brilliant insight. I'd smiled and sipped my wine and said nothing. What I didn't say, I'd been watching David's company carefully. The financials were concerning. Revenue growth was slowing. Customer acquisition costs were rising. Burn rate was unsustainable. The Series B valuation was inflated, based on projections that were increasingly unrealistic. But I wasn't invited to comment. I was just the little sister who didn't understand business. 3 months ago things got worse. David's company needed a bridge round. The Series B money was running out faster than projected. They needed $30 million to reach their next milestone. A major enterprise contract that would validate their business model and position them for Series C or acquisition. David was confident. We've got investors lined up. 3 term sheets already. This is just a formality. At Sunday dinner he explained his strategy. The technical details, the investor negotiations, the timeline. Dad listened intently, asked insightful questions, praised David's business acumen. I listened quietly from my end of the table. What about you, Rachel? Aunt Linda asked politely. How's your research going? It's fine. Working on some new market efficiency models. That sounds complicated, she said in the tone people use when they're not actually interested. It's pretty technical. Leave finance to the experts, David interjected, laughing. Rachel's job is to write papers about what we do. She doesn't actually do it. Dad chuckled. She doesn't understand business like you do, son. Different skill sets. Both valuable in their own way. Sure, David agreed magnanimously. Someone has to be the academic. Not everyone has the stomach for real-world pressure. I cut my chicken into precise pieces and said nothing. Though I will say, David continued, warming to his topic, academia is kind of a cop-out. You get tenure, you're basically unfireable. No risk, no pressure, just publishing papers nobody reads. Must be comfortable. I don't have tenure, I said mildly. But you will eventually, right? That's the whole academic career path. Get to a safe position where you can coast. That's not really how it works. Close enough. He turned back to Dad. Anyway, about the bridge round, Goldman is leading. They love our metrics. The conversation moved on. Nobody asked follow-up questions about my work. Nobody wondered why I seemed unfazed by David's constant dismissal. Nobody considered that my quiet acceptance might mean something other than defeat. 2 weeks later, I got a call from James Wu, my attorney and the managing director of RCM Capital's operations. We've been approached by a fintech company seeking emergency financing, he said. David Chen's company, actually. They're looking for $30 million bridge funding. Their previous commitments fell through. All 3 term sheets? Apparently. Market conditions shifted, investors got cold feet, suddenly everyone's risk-averse. They're desperate. How desperate? They'll be insolvent in 45 days without new capital. They're reaching out to anyone who might write a check. I pulled up David's company financials on my screen. I'd been monitoring them quarterly through public filings and some discrete information requests. The picture was worse than I'd thought. Monthly burn, $4.7 million. Current runway, 6 weeks. Revenue growth, flat for 3 quarters. Customer churn, accelerating. The enterprise contract they were counting on had been delayed indefinitely. What are they offering? I asked. $30 million for 25% equity plus 3 board seats. They're also offering aggressive warrant coverage and downside protection. They're basically giving away the company to whoever will save them. What's your assessment? Honestly, it's a bad deal. The company's fundamentals are weak. They're burning cash to fuel growth that isn't happening. Management is overconfident and not addressing core problems. I'd recommend passing. And if we wanted to take the deal anyway? Then we'd have significant control. 3 board seats out of 7. Major decision authority. We could force strategic changes, cut burn rate, actually fix what's broken. Send me the term sheet. I'll review it. I spent 3 days analyzing every aspect of David's company. The product was good, actually quite innovative. The team was talented. The market opportunity was real. The problem was execution and financial discipline. They'd raised too much money too early and scaled too fast. They'd burned through capital on fancy offices, excessive hiring, expensive marketing campaigns that didn't generate returns. Classic startup mistakes but fixable. With proper financial management, the company could be profitable within 18 months. With my algorithms optimizing their treasury management and cash flow, maybe 12 months. But David would hate every minute of it. I called James back. Take the deal. Structure it so RCM Capital gets operational oversight on all financial decisions over $100,000. I want monthly board meetings and full transparency on metrics. You're going to take control of your brother's company? I'm going to save it. Whether he appreciates that is his problem. He's going to figure out you're behind RCM Capital. Eventually. But let's let that be a surprise. The term sheet went out on Friday. David's company had until Monday to accept or reject. That Sunday we had family dinner. David looked stressed in a way I'd never seen. The confidence was cracked, the swagger diminished. Everything okay? Mom asked. Fine. Just some fundraising complications. Nothing I can't handle. I thought you had investors lined up? Dad said. Market conditions changed. People are more cautious now. But we've got other options. What kind of options? Private equity firms, family offices, institutional investors. We're evaluating several proposals. I'm sure you'll close something great, Dad said confidently. You always do. David nodded but didn't meet his eyes. I ate my salmon quietly. How's the research world, Rachel? Uncle Tom asked, making conversation. Busy. Lots of interesting projects. Still writing papers? Among other things. Must be nice having a stable job, David said, some of his old condescension returning. Not having to worry about fundraising or keeping a company alive or real business pressure. It has its advantages, I agreed. I mean, I couldn't do it. I need the excitement, the challenge, the high stakes. But I respect that some people prefer safety. I smiled and said nothing. Monday morning, David's company accepted RCM Capital's term sheet. They had no choice. It was that or bankruptcy. The $30 million wire transferred Tuesday afternoon. By Tuesday evening, I had full board access and visibility into every aspect of the company's operations. It was worse than I'd thought. They'd been cooking the books slightly, not fraudulently, but optimistically interpreting metrics to look better to investors. Actual customer retention was 12% lower than reported. Revenue recognition was aggressive. Several major contracts were at risk. I scheduled an emergency board meeting for Thursday. Wednesday night, David called me. First time he'd called in 6 months. Hey Rach. How are you? I'm fine. What's up? I wanted to let you know, we closed our bridge round. Got a great investor, really sophisticated financial firm. RCM Capital. Have you heard of them? I might have read about them somewhere. They're apparently really good. Quantitative trading background, strong financial discipline. Exactly what we need to get to profitability. That sounds positive. Yeah, Dad's thrilled. He's telling everyone his son closed a major funding round even in a tough market. Proving again that I know what I'm doing. Congratulations. Thanks. Anyway, I have my first board meeting with them Thursday. Should be straightforward. They seem pretty hands-off from the term sheet. Good luck with that. I don't need luck. I know what I'm doing. Unlike some people who just theorize about business. He'd laughed and hung up. Thursday at 10 a.m., I walked into the board meeting at David's company headquarters in San Francisco. I'd flown in the night before, staying at a modest hotel near the airport. I wore a Loro Piana suit I'd never worn around my family. Carried a Val Extra briefcase. Looked every inch the successful investor I'd always been but never shown them. The conference room was on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Expensive furniture, catered breakfast, all the trappings of a well-funded startup. David was already there with his CFO and CEO. He was laughing at something, confident in his element. He looked up as I entered. His smile froze. Rachel, what are you doing here? Board meeting. I'm with RCM Capital. You, what? I took a seat at the table, opened my briefcase. RCM Capital. Your new majority investor. I'm the founder and Didn't they mention that? His face went through several colors. This is a joke. It's not. Here's my identification, corporate credentials, and documentation showing my role. I slid the documents across the table. His CFO picked them up, examined them, looked up at me with dawning horror. This is legitimate. RCM Capital is. You. Correct. But you're a researcher, David said weakly. You work at a think tank. You make like $180,000 a year. How could you possibly? I make $180,000 from the think tank. My actual compensation last year was $47 million from RCM Capital. The think tank job is more of a hobby. The silence was absolute. 47 million, his CEO repeated. Approximately. Some years it's more, some less. Depends on market conditions and fund performance. You run a hedge fund? David's voice was barely a whisper. Quantitative trading fund, technically. We manage $480 million in assets for 17 institutional clients. Consistent 40% plus annual returns for 6 years. We're fairly well known in certain circles. I've heard of RCM Capital, the CFO said slowly. Everyone in finance has. You're one of the best quant funds in the country. We do well. And you're Rachel Chin, David's sister. The one who doesn't understand business. I looked at David. That was a quote from you actually. 2 weeks ago at Sunday dinner. Leave finance to the experts. Do you remember? He couldn't speak. Anyway, let's begin. I've reviewed your financials in detail. We have significant concerns about burn rate, revenue recognition practices, and operational efficiency. I've prepared a restructuring plan that will cut monthly expenses by 35% and position you for profitability within 12 months. You can't restructure my company, David found his voice. I can absolutely restructure this company. RCM Capital holds 25% equity and 3 board seats. Combined with the other board members' concerns about current performance, we have voting control on any major decision. That's how corporate governance works. This is revenge. You're doing this to humiliate me. I'm doing this to save a company that's 45 days from insolvency. Whether you feel humiliated is irrelevant to the business case. I open my presentation. 60 slides of detailed analysis, cost-cutting recommendations, strategic pivots, operational improvements. I walked them through it for 90 minutes. Every question they asked, I had data to answer. Every objection they raised, I had solutions for. By the end, even David couldn't deny the logic. His company was dying. My plan would save it. His ego was the only casualty. How long have you been doing this? He asked finally. Running a hedge fund. Making millions. Being this person. Since I was 26. 8 years. And you never told us? You never asked. You spent 8 years telling me I didn't understand business, that I was hiding in academia, that I'd chosen the safe path. I saw no reason to correct your assumptions. Why save my company then? If we treated you so badly, why not let it fail? Because the company is good. The product is innovative, the team is talented, the market opportunity is real. You're bad at financial management, but that's fixable. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because this is a good investment. Everything you're proposing, cutting staff, eliminating perks, reducing marketing spend, it's going to destroy morale. It's going to create a sustainable business. Morale in a bankrupt company is 0. Morale in a profitable company with actual job security is high. You're confusing luxury with necessity. His CEO nodded slowly. She's right, David. We've been burning money on things that don't drive growth. This plan is aggressive but sound. You're siding with her? I'm siding with keeping my job. And this is the only plan I've seen that makes that possible. The board voted on the restructuring plan. 5 votes in favor, 2 against. It passed. David stared at the table, his perfect confidence completely shattered. I'll send implementation details by tomorrow, I said, packing my briefcase. We'll meet monthly to track progress. I expect full transparency on all metrics. Real numbers, not the optimistic interpretations you've been showing investors. This is going to kill the company culture, David said weakly. The company culture is already toxic. You've built an environment where spending money equals success, where profitability is somehow beneath you, where fundamentals don't matter because you can always raise more money. That culture was going to kill this company. I'm just forcing you to grow up faster than you wanted to. I stood to leave. Does Dad know? David asked. About your fund, your money, any of this? No. Nobody knows except the people in this room. Whether you tell them is up to you. They're not going to believe it. Then show them the documentation. It's all verifiable. I walked out, leaving David and his team to process the complete inversion of everything they'd believed about me. The flight back to Boston gave me time to think about family, assumptions, and the particular satisfaction of proving everyone wrong in the most undeniable way possible. David didn't tell the family immediately. He spent 2 weeks trying to process it himself, trying to find some angle where this wasn't a complete humiliation. But gossip in the startup world travels fast. Someone at his company knew someone who knew someone in our extended family's network. Within 3 weeks, the story had reached my parents through indirect channels. Mom called me on a Tuesday evening. Rachel, we heard something very strange. Is it true you're some kind of investor in David's company? I'm the lead investor in his bridge round, yes. But how? Where would you get that kind of money? I earned it. Through my fund, RCM Capital. You have a fund? Like a hedge fund? Quantitative trading fund. I've been running it for 8 years. Silence on the line. How much money are we talking about? She asked finally. The fund manages $480 million. My personal net worth is around $156 million. The sound she made wasn't quite a gasp, wasn't quite a sob. Rachel, this doesn't make sense. You're a researcher. You live in a tiny apartment. You drive that old car. How could you possibly? I live modestly because I don't need luxury. The apartment is 1,200 square feet in Cambridge, which is fine for one person. The car runs perfectly well. I spend my money on things that matter, not things that impress people. Why didn't you tell us? For the same reason I'm not going to repeat this conversation with Dad. You wouldn't have believed me. You spent 8 years watching David succeed and assuming I was struggling. You offered to help with my rent. You worried about my financial stability. You never once considered that I might be more successful than him. We would have been proud. Would you? Or would you have been uncomfortable that your daughter was more successful than your son? That the academic disappointment was actually a financial genius? That every assumption you'd made about both of us was wrong? She had no answer. How did you learn to do this? She asked instead. I taught myself. Read everything about quantitative finance, built algorithms, tested them, refined them. Turned my PhD dissertation into actual trading strategies. Worked 20-hour days for years while David was partying at business school. Built something real while everyone assumed I was wasting my life on theory. David must be devastated. David is humiliated. There's a difference. Devastated implies he's lost something. He hasn't. He still has his company, still has his title, still has his opportunity. He just has to accept that his little sister knows more about finance than he does. This is going to change everything. It already has. I'll see you at Sunday dinner. I hung up before she could respond. Sunday dinner was spectacular in its awkwardness. I arrived in my usual modest clothes, driving my Honda, looking exactly as I always had. But the energy in the room was completely different. David looked like he'd aged 5 years. Dad couldn't meet my eyes. Mom kept trying to start conversations and then trailing off. Aunt Linda and Uncle Tom, who'd apparently heard through the family gossip network, stared at me like I'd grown a second head. We sat down to eat. Nobody knew what to say. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Rachel, your mother told me about your business activities. RCM Capital, yes. I looked it up. You're quite successful. We've done well. Why didn't you tell us? You never asked. In 8 years, nobody in this family asked a single substantive question about my work beyond, how's the research going? You assumed academic meant unsuccessful. That assumption was yours to make. We would have supported you. The way you supported me by calling my work theoretical? By laughing when David called it irrelevant? By offering to help with my rent because you assumed I was struggling? He had no response. I turned to David. How's the restructuring going? His jaw tightened. Fine. We've implemented most of your recommendations. And you were right. Burn rate is down 37%. We're tracking toward profitability Q3 next year. Morale is actually better because people feel like we have a real plan instead of just spending until we run out of money. Good. That's what I projected. You're not going to gloat? Why would I gloat? This is business. You had a problem, I provided a solution, the company is healthier. There's nothing personal about it. Everything about this is personal, he said quietly. You're my little sister. You weren't supposed to be better at this than me. Better is subjective. You're an excellent entrepreneur with great product instincts. You're just not good at financial management. Those are different skill sets. Dad always said you didn't understand business. I looked at Dad. Did you say that? He couldn't meet my eyes. I may have. I didn't understand what you were really doing. No, you didn't understand because you didn't ask. You made assumptions based on my job title and my lifestyle choices. You decided I was less successful than David because I didn't perform success the way he did. That's not fair, Mom said. We didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. David's success was loud and visible and easy to brag about. My success was quiet and complex and didn't fit your narrative of what achievement looks like. So you ignored it. Silence around the table. What happens now? Etlinda asked. Now. Nothing changes for most of you. I'll continue running my fund, managing David's company as an investor and living my life. David's company will hopefully become profitable and eventually exit successfully. Everyone wins. Except my ego, David said with a bitter laugh. Your ego was always fragile. You just hid it behind aggression and put-downs. Maybe this will teach you some humility. You're enjoying this. I'm not enjoying anything. I'm sitting at a family dinner where everyone's uncomfortable because they realize they were wrong about me for 8 years. There's no joy in that. Just exhaustion. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. My portfolio manager with a question about a trade execution. I texted back quickly, then looked up to find everyone staring. Work? Dad asked. Always. Markets don't stop for family dinners. What was it? Technical question about a $40 million position we're taking in Asian markets. Nothing urgent. The number hung in the air. 40 million. More than David's entire bridge round. Just a routine trade for me. How much do you manage total? Uncle Tom asked. Right now. $480 million in the main fund, plus my personal portfolio of $156 million, plus some smaller side projects. Call it $650 million total. Dad made a sound like he'd been punched. You're worth more than our entire extended family combined, he said slowly. Probably. I haven't calculated everyone's net worth, but yes, likely. And you live in that apartment. It's a nice apartment. It's 1,200 square feet. Which is plenty of space for one person. I don't need 5,000 square feet and 5 bathrooms. That's just wasted money and cleaning time. You could afford anything. Affording something doesn't mean you should buy it. That's actually the core principle of good financial management. David's company got into trouble because they spent money on things they could afford but didn't need. My fund succeeds because we only deploy capital where it generates returns. David looked up. Is that a shot at me? It's a statement of investment philosophy. If you feel shot at, maybe examine why. The dinner continued in painful silence. People ate, made small talk, avoided the elephant in the room. The entire family hierarchy had just been inverted. As I prepared to leave, Dad pulled me aside. Rachel, I owe you an apology. A real one. Okay. I dismissed your work, your intelligence, your capabilities. I assumed David was the successful one and you were. I don't know what I thought. Comfortable but unremarkable. I was completely wrong. Yes, you were. Can you forgive me? I considered that. I don't know. You spent 8 years telling me directly and indirectly that my work didn't matter. That I'd chosen the safe path. That I didn't understand business the way David did. Those weren't casual comments. They shaped how this entire family saw me. I know. And now you want forgiveness because you discovered you were wrong. But you're not apologizing for how you treated me. You're apologizing because my success is undeniable. That's not the same thing. He winced. You're right. I don't need your validation anymore, Dad. I spent my 20s desperate for it, working insane hours partly to prove I was worth noticing. But I don't need it now. I know what I've built. I know what I'm capable of. Your opinion doesn't change that. Then what do you need? Honestly, I need you to stop comparing me to David. I need you to accept that we're successful in different ways, that my quiet approach doesn't mean I'm less than him. I need you to actually ask about my work instead of assuming you know what it is. And I need you to acknowledge that your assumptions about me were not just wrong but harmful. I can do that. I will do that. We'll see. I drove back to Boston that night thinking about validation, success, and the particular pain of being underestimated by people who should know you best. 3 months later, David's company hit profitability for the first time. Monthly burn was now manageable, revenue was growing consistently, customer retention had improved. David called me personally. I wanted you to hear it from me first. We did it. Profitability. Congratulations. That's exactly what the plan projected. Your plan. Which I fought every step of the way because my ego couldn't handle my little sister telling me how to run my company. And now I'm grateful. You saved my company, Rachel. I would have run it into the ground trying to prove I knew what I was doing. You actually did know what you were doing and you saved me from myself. Thank you for saying that. I'm sorry. For everything. For 8 years of putting you down, dismissing your work, making you feel less than. You were never less than. You were just operating at a level I couldn't see. I appreciate that. Are we okay? We're getting there. Keep being honest like this and we'll get there. 6 months after my investment, David's company received an acquisition offer from a major fintech player. $680 million all cash. My 25% stake would be worth $170 million. Not bad for a $30 million investment 6 months earlier. At the family dinner where David announced the acquisition, the dynamic was completely different. People asked about my work with genuine interest. Dad wanted to understand my trading strategies. Mom asked about my plans for the acquisition proceeds. Aunt Linda asked if I'd consider managing some of her retirement portfolio. David raised his glass. I want to make a toast. To Rachel, who saved my company when I was too stupid and too proud to save it myself. Who's proven that quiet success is just as valid as loud success. Who's taught this family that we don't know everything and that's okay. Everyone drank. I smiled, accepted the recognition and thought about the years of dismissal that had led to this moment. Leave finance to the experts, David had said. Turned out I was the expert. I'd always been the expert. They'd just been too convinced of their own narrative to see it. My phone buzzed during dessert. James Wu, my portfolio manager. Ma'am, confirming the $230 million withdrawal from their accounts? The text was a test alert about a different client's large withdrawal. But I glanced at it and realized how easily I could do that to my family. How much power I actually held. $480 million in assets under management. 17 institutional clients who trusted me with their wealth. David's company's acquisition proceeds flowing through my accounts. My family's retirement planning potentially dependent on my advice and management. The girl who'd been told she didn't understand business now controlled more capital than everyone in her family combined. That's not revenge. That's just the inevitable result of underestimating someone for long enough that they build an empire in the shadows while you're busy congratulating yourself. I could have destroyed David's company. Let it fail, let him learn the hard way. But I didn't. Because I'm a professional. Because the company was worth saving. Because despite everything he's still my brother. And because the best revenge isn't destruction. It's succeeding so completely that everyone has to acknowledge they were wrong. It's being the expert they told you to defer to. It's holding the power they never thought you'd attain. I texted James back. Maintain all positions. No changes. Then I set my phone down and enjoyed my dessert. Because that's what experts do. We make decisions calmly, manage our power responsibly, and don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. The proof is in the portfolio. And mine speaks for itself.